This PlayStation 5 was provided by PlayStation for review. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Kinda Funny Gamescast. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the new face of video games, Blessing, Adeoye Jr.
Be better, Greg, or be perfect, or be good. What's the phrase from the game?
It's be great or be yourself.
Be yourself.
So
That's the
you
one.
you were combining our usual, be better to each other thing with
Yeah.
Spider-Man with then trying to shove in the Miles. You didn't do a good job. I'm not gonna
No, I
lie.
did not. I did not. I try to think of what was my opening phrase going to be, and my mind went a million places. None of them were the right.
And none of
place.
them were correct.
None of them were
It
the
just
correct
went,
place.
and that was the end of where it was.
Flip, Greg.
Thwip, and that was much better. See, Blessing, that
Thank
was
you.
way better. You should have started
Thank
it
you.
there. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a very special Kind of Funny Games cast, namely because it's just us. It's a PS I Love You XOXO takeover of the Kind of Funny Games cast. Of course, Blessing and I host a PlayStation podcast each and every Tuesday. And today, as luck would have it, who would have expected it? PlayStation sent us PlayStation 5s. Of course, this is your disclosure. Thank you, PlayStation, for sending us PlayStation 5s for review, of course. And one of the things we're allowed to review is Spider-Man Miles Morales. So it gets a Gamescast review outside of the normal PS I Love You show, which is also up as of right now. You can go get the new episode of PS I Love You XOXO, which is the PlayStation 5 review. There's also another Gamescast up right now that is Astro's Playroom review, because yes, another PlayStation 5 embargo has popped over on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames and podcast services around the globe. Remember, you can go to kindoffunny.com/PS5, catch all of our YouTube content gathered in one place about the PlayStation 5. Before we get into that, this is the Kind of Funny Gamescast. Each and every week, usually a whole bunch of us get together and talk about what we love in video games, what we don't like in video games, and oh, so much more. We serve our reviews here, our big topics of the week here. That's what the Gamescast is all about. Again, we only had 2 PS5 sent our way. So, Imran, Tim, don't let the door hit you or the good Lord split you. Get your ass out of here. We got work to do. Right, Bless?
Right.
Of course, the Gamescast goes up each and every week. You can be part of it on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, like so many of you did with your questions, comments, and concerns. If you don't want to give us any bucks, over on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, where, of course, be part of the show, get the show ad-free, and get an exclusive post show, and usually get to watch us live because of embargoes. You can't. If you don't want to do any of that thing, get any of those perks, or give us any of those bucks, I understand. You can get a brand new episode of the Gamescast each and every week on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, Rooster Teeth, and podcast services around the globe each and every week. Housekeeping for you, like I said, it is PS5 season. Kindoffunny.com/PS5. It has all you need right there from our hands-on impressions of using the PlayStation 5. It's also worth pointing out that you are watching this probably on Friday. Tomorrow, Saturday, is Extra Life for Kind of Funny. We are raising money for the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. You can go to kindoffunny.com/extra life to either donate or join the Kind of Funny Extra Life team. You can then stream 24 hours of video games or just play 24 hours of video games offline. Break it up however you want to. Doesn't need to be in one big chunk. You do that, you raise money, and then you benefit a children's hospital in your area. Of course, we are playing for UCSF Benioff Hospital here in San Francisco. But you can join Team Kind of Funny, raise money in our name, and have your money raised go to your local children's hospital. Regardless of all of that, Friday afternoon at 1 p.m., we are starting community streams, meaning you can tune to twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames, see a whole bunch of Kind of Funny best friends, raise money, stay up late, play games as they build to 10 a.m. Pacific time. Twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames. Kind of Funny Extra Life 2020 officially kicks off with the Kind of Funny crew going for 12 straight hours till 10 p.m. Pacific time. So lots to do, but even more to say today. Before I get into that, thank you to our Patreon producers, Blackjack, Tom Bach, ALWT Gaming, Kevin is the best Christmas elf, Jeffrey P Long, Sancho West Gaming, and James Hastings. Today, we're brought to you by Upstart and Guideline. But it's enough of all that stuff. Blessing, you and I have been playing. We have both beaten Spider-Man Miles Morales. Again, we played on the PlayStation 5. That's what we're reviewing on. PlayStation sent them for review for FTC guidelines and all that jazz. Blessing,
Greg.
how long have you been playing? Like, where would you ballpark your hours for Spider-Man Miles Morales? And do you like it?
I would ballpark around 11, 12 hours, I want to
Okay,
say.
sure.
I do like it, If I'm talking about my overall thoughts and feelings on Spider-Man Miles Morales, that's where it gets kind of complicated because
Ooh.
I think objectively it is a great game. It is a
Yeah.
fantastic game. If you like Spider-Man 2018, you're gonna like Miles Morales. I think where it gets complicated is expectations versus what it is and what it has set itself up to be, because
Okay.
we've gone through the whole rigmarole over the last 6 or so months from announcement to now launch, where at announcement there was the whole like, okay, what is this? Is it Uncharted Lost Legacy? Is it this expansion? Is it DLC? Is it a full game? And slowly but surely we got more and more confirmation that it is more akin to Uncharted Lost Legacy, meaning
Sure.
that it is an iteration of the previous game. It is going to be shorter. It is going to be more contained, but it is going to have the spirit of a full game, right? You are going to get your money's worth out of this, right? And
Yeah.
I guess for this particular game, right, the money's worth is, I believe, $50 for full price. Does that
Yeah,
sound
70
right?
bucks if you get Ultimate Edition on PlayStation 5 that comes with Spider-Man Remastered.
Yes. And so with that, I'm somebody who really likes Uncharted Lost Legacy. Like Uncharted Lost Legacy is probably my favorite Uncharted game. I've said that before. And part of why I like that is because, for those games, I always felt like the Uncharted games, at least I'll say this about Uncharted 4. It's been a while since I played the previous ones, but Uncharted 4 for me was like slightly too long in the tooth. Uncharted Lost Legacy, I liked the shift in character. I liked the shift in tone. I liked how contained it was. So much of what Uncharted Lost Legacy did with it being an iteration of Uncharted 4, felt uh like it appealed to me way more than previous games. And I was kind of expecting the same from Miles Morales, where it is letting us play as a character that is, hey, Miles Morales is the hotness right now, right? We got into the Spider-Verse. We met this particular Miles Morales in Spider-Man 2018, and from the trailers we've seen, right, we're styling this the way we imagine a Miles Morales game should be styled, right? We have the soundtrack, which has in the fight scenes, right, you have 808 drums and hi-hats, hitting in a way where it's like, okay, no, like here we go. This game has attitude and style. You have a game that is focused in Harlem, I believe, right? Because
Ooh,
that Miles moved to Harlem from Brooklyn. Uh,
correct.
you have that. You have just a new protagonist that isn't Peter Parker, which I think in and of itself is really exciting. For me, it gets complicated because I think with that setup, I expected to like Miles Morales way more than I actually ended up liking it. Like I like it a
Wow.
lot.
Yeah.
I think it's great, but for me, it is held back by what it is. It is held back by it being this iteration as opposed to a full what we think of as a full Spider-Man experience.
Okay. So you're talking in length and story? Like what
It
holds it back?
for me, it's a few things, right?
Okay.
It is I think the story, I think the first half of the story is great. I think the first half of the story is magnificent, but I think toward the end it starts to wrap up in a way where I'm like, "Ooh, I wish this had way more time." Like the ending
Mm.
didn't feel like it had enough time to develop, like specifically in character motivations.
I should toss this out to you. I should have said it
Mhm.
earlier. Heads up, this is a spoiler-free review, so you don't have to worry
Yeah.
about us going in and spoiling what the MacGuffin is or who the bad guys are or you know what I mean, like identities and relationships and shit like that.
Yeah. And so like I felt like it wrapped up a little bit too quickly. I felt like in terms of the actual combat and actual gameplay, it feels exactly like Spider-Man 2018, which is a great thing because that game felt great, but at the same time for me, a little bit unfortunate because I was looking for something a little bit new, and that's where I get conflicted about a lot of this stuff. Is a lot of where I come down on in this game is, man, it's pretty much Spider-Man 2018, which I adored. Spider-Man 2018
Mhm.
is one of my favorite games of that year and of the generation, but it feels like more of that. Like at its best, this game feels like a fresh take on a Spider-Man game with a new character and all the stuff that I mentioned before. But at its worst, this game for me does feel like an expansion pack, which depending on who you are, that might be fine. That might be whatever. For me, it's fine. Like again, I think this game is great. I'm probably gonna come off very negative in this review because maybe I was expecting a bit more. But
Sure.
overall, like I had a really fun time with it. I beat it in probably about 8 hours, and
Yeah, that sounds right.
it felt short, but at the same time, it is like they're not selling it full price, and so it's hard for me to even get mad at that.
Yeah, you said 50 before, right? I wanted to fact
Yeah.
check. That's what we
I
it
said
it is.
50.
Yeah, 50 for just the launch edition, yeah, 70 for the, bundled ultimate edition. No, I'm glad I don't think first off, don't ever worry about sounding negative. I want you to
Mm,
come in and have, that. I think you'll honestly balance me out because 'cause I'm super positive. I think you're right there. It's probably 8 or 9 hours for, seeing the story all the way through, and of course, it's Spider-Man, so there's a bunch of, different, side activities to go do, collectibles to earn, different things to get into. So I clocked it ballpark math at 9 hours, 9-ish for me to beat it. And then I platinumed it. It's my first platinum on PlayStation 5, which was fun.
hey,
And I put that at
congratulations.
like 15, 16 or something like that because of course there is a for trophies, there is a finish it on New Game Plus. So you run through it again, but skipping cutscenes and going through just mainlining story missions rather than getting distracted by side stuff. It went quickly. So I say 15-ish, but again, a little hard to actually sit down and do since I didn't have a stopwatch going. However, I'm fascinated by your take on it and interested to talk more about it today because yeah, we haven't talked about this before. We have
No,
not
not at
actually
all.
had any conversations about Spider-Man and Miles Morales, and I'm going to be fascinated to see because for me personally, and I know it's a big statement, this is better than Spider-Man 2018.
Mm,
Like I think I don't think anything you said is incorrect. I think that it's honestly a little bit it's cheating in a way, right? Because it is very much taking all the learnings and criticisms people gave 2018 and getting another shot at it, getting to improve on it. You know what I mean? I think from the way when I'm playing it and when I'm going through it and when I'm talking about it to Jen or whoever will listen around here, I'm always like, Insomniac stepped up the game on every level, IMO, in terms of acting, in terms of obviously visuals because it's on PlayStation 5. For me, it's in terms of cinematography. And I do want to point out that, I'm very excited to do Spider-Man remastered here in a little bit. I haven't played Spider-Man PS4 since I platinumed it in 2018. Or I guess, well, the DLC, right? So
mm.
whenever the last piece of DLC
And
came
which I
out.
think was December.
So it's that thing where I am playing with what I kind of remember Spider-Man PS4 to be. I have not gone back to do it, but for me, it was the fact that this one feels so much more like a blockbuster Spider-Man movie, where it is the cinematography, it is the way they use music, it is the way that I guess that's something about it. Where sure, there's the Spider-Man theme we all know, and you hear it in Miles Morales, albeit tweaked a bit to be more Milesy, right? Like the music put on Spider-Man PS4 reminded me more of a Spider-Man orchestral score in a movie than it did something that spoke to who that Peter Parker was. Whereas the way, just like Into the Spider-Verse, the way in Miles Morales here on PlayStation 5, they use music and the way Miles listens to music and Miles is about music
Mhm.
makes it feel more natural and interwoven. And then to get to the way they shoot scenes, the way they now do action, the way they have everybody work together, the way they make Harlem a character in the game, and then to get into the real cast of characters, right? And again, no spoilers here. So this is all information you would know in case you didn't know anything about it. But like the way they use Genki, the way they use Miles's mom and how she's running, for local politics, the way they use Peter in it, like I feel like they do such a good job of expanding on the universe they created in 2018 and not in iterating on it. Is it Spider-Man 2? Of course not. No, it's not meant to be, I don't think. But it is uniquely Miles's story. And I think part of the reason, I talk about Spider-Man PS4, I was in a similar boat, I think, with you talking about Spider-Man Miles Morales. Where with PlayStation 4 back in the day, I loved it, obviously. A platinum it, had a great time with it. But it was that thing of like, I felt at times they played it a bit too safe. I thought at times it was a little bit too predictable. I thought you kind of knew where certain things were going to go, knowing who Spider-Man is and Peter is in his rogues gallery. Uh, Miles, of course, even though I've read obviously comic books and stuff for Miles, and I've seen him in Into the Spider Verse and in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 and stuff, by no means am I an expert on Miles Morales. By no means have I grown up, the same 30 years I've been consuming Spider Man content. I haven't been consuming Miles Morales content as long. So, some of the things that happen in here and the way they have characters introduced afterwards, it was that thing of me Googling and be like, is that an original character? Like, who is this
Mhm.
person? Did they already have a relationship? Oh no, she was made for this game. Oh, that's really interesting. Like they do a good job of taking what we already knew from it and making this feel like an expansion of that universe in a fun way, in the same way I think the MCU films do, and in the way we talk about it in review when we do these universes. Is we just did Dark Knight as of even for when you see this, we just did Dark Knight, and there was this thing of like, oh man, like the argument of Scarecrow is kind of just pops up in the front, and I thought that was awesome to have that Easter egg, and other people thought it was lame. They wanted more of him, but I like that. Then there's this connective tissue that things in Gotham keep moving, and I think this game does a great job of things in New York keep moving, but at the same time making it uniquely Miles' story.
Yeah, I want to. That's something I want to commend them on too, because I feel like they did do a good job of setting this story in this game. Like the way in which they kind of get rid of Peter Parker. The way in
Yeah,
which they kind of set that up, I thought was it. Like I think it was well done, even though it felt easy. Where it's like, hey, Peter just has to go out of town. Like that's pretty much the whole thing. And like that kind of just leaves Miles to be the one who has to take care of what's going on in the city. And you know, I like that. I like the fact that this felt like way it felt lower stakes, even though it did feel relatively high stakes when you think like by the time you finish, you're like, okay, yeah, no, like there's a lot of stake. But compared to the original game, compared to 2018, right? Like where there's a certain point in 2018 where it's like, oh, New York is in trouble. Like things are going down in this third act in a way where
yeah,
if Spider-Man doesn't succeed, then shit is not gonna be good. Here they do a really good job of containing things to Miles's character and Miles's story, and in like Spider-Man fashion, right? In Peter Parker fashion, even like everything is kind of connected in a way where it makes things feel personal for Miles,
yeah,
right? Whether it is, hey, everything is going on pretty much in Harlem, right? Or like, okay, no, Peter knows X, Y, and Z character, or not Peter. Miles knows X, Y, and Z character, and so that's how this connects back to him. I really like that stuff, and it is
yeah,
like it does take and learn from Spider-Man 2018, I think, in really good ways. Like the fact that they don't have the Mary Jane stealth missions or even
sure,
the science puzzles that 2018 had. I think that's a step up. I think at the same time, that's kind of where I come down on as far as, yeah, this game just doesn't feel as big as Spider-Man 2018. I think that's my main thing, right? It just doesn't feel as big or as important or as fantastic. And I know it doesn't really need to be, but part of me just wish they went maybe an extra mile in terms of making this one a little bit more reaching that, because even though the Mary Jane missions felt out of place in terms of, oh yeah, you're just throwing me into this regular human being stealth portion of the game, it did
yeah,
feel like it added into a, okay, no, like you are getting different sides of the story, you're getting these different characters perspectives, you are there there are more villain characters in Spider-Man 2018, there are more uh there's just more story there, right? It just felt like a bigger fantastic story there, as opposed to Miles Morales, I feel is very contained. And again, like that's what they want to do. But in my, I guess for my taste, it felt in some places a bit too contained to where you get to the finale in this one, and I'm like, okay, so these are just the villains. All right, I guess. Like I don't know. Like the main villain I thought was good, but then like there are like one or two other villains that are introduced, and I'm like, all right, these guys are just here, like whatever. Like I don't understand why this person is here, especially, and we can talk about it more. I'm sure in
There's
upcoming
gonna be
podcasts.
we're gonna do a Spider-Man Miles Morales spoiler cast next week, so
Yeah.
don't worry about it. There'll be a spoiler cast waiting for you when this drops. So as soon as you beat it, you can go listen to it. Yeah, I don't think you're wrong, but I love that about it. Where I think
Mhm.
that I don't even I'll keep saying it, I guess, but like obviously I love Spider-Man PS4, but I thought at times it did do too much. Everybody always harps on the Mary Jane stuff, which I didn't hate, but I didn't love. But then it was more the fact of, for Spider-Man PS4 introducing the Sinister Six, right? But rather than us chase them all down like in an Arkham Knight kind of way, right? And have all these different villains we need to go find and go do their stuff, you start just fighting them and you beat them all really quick, and then you're back to what it was. What I love about Miles Morales is that it is a smaller game and it is a more intimate story. Like I do appreciate, and again, this is not spoilers. You're talking about like the main villain, right? Like we
Mhm.
see the main villain in cutscenes already. It's already been revealed that it's
Yeah, in the
the
trailer, yeah.
Tinkerer. It's the Tinkerer. And the fact that they made the Tinkerer a fascinating character where I am like, what are they going to do? And how does all this shake out? And how are they related to Miles? And what does that do? And yeah, blah, blah. Like, I appreciate that this game says, here's the story, here's the scope, here's where we go. And it is anchored around Harlem. You have obviously all of Manhattan to run around and do stuff in, but you are mainly anchored there because that is your whole shtick. And it speaks to me of what people, and myself included, but it's a longer conversation for another time about Spider-Man. What people love about Spider-Man, which is being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, which is having this more personal approach to superheroing, right? Where I think, Avengers and the MCU did a good job of that when, Iron Man tells Tom Holland, right? Like, just focus on being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Like, stay local, do this kind of thing. And so I appreciate that is what Miles' story is here. And it is him struggling with being Spider-Man, struggling with being the only Spider-Man, being
Mm.
solo for the first time. And, for the most part, I think a lot of times origin stories are the most interesting. And to be dropped into Spider-Man PS4 and have Spider-Man already be Spider-Man, he's been Spider-Man a long time. Pete knows what he's doing. To get to go on that journey with Miles here of him learning not only how to be Spider-Man, but what his abilities are, I found fascinating and I found enjoyment in. And I think it gives Miles Morales as a character more to work with and go through. Because obviously, and I don't have it pulled up in front of me. Do you remember the voice actor for Miles Morales?
I don't remember do I is it like I don't wanna guess it. I don't remember his name. It's like on the tip
Hold
of my tongue, but
on.
I'm not gonna guess it.
Spider-Man Miles Morales actor, Najee Jeter.
Najee, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking, yeah.
Uh, I again would never sit here. May my hands fall off if I was here going to talk shit about Yuri Lowenthal, of course, Peter Parker from Spider-Man in both this and the PS4 version, right? I think the fact that Najee has so much more to work with here. I think there's so much more range for him here
Mm.
that I love Miles in a way that playing PS4 Spider-Man, you're like, yep, this is Peter. Yep, this is Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. This is good. And like, there's trials and tribulations for him and stuff. But Miles, I feel like, has ups and downs throughout this stories. I feel like, spoilers for Spider-Man PS4, I guess, at the very, not even full blown ones, but at the very end, right? I always talk about where in the final fight, Spider-Man goes, "You knew." And it's like this moment for him and for us that was so cool. I feel like Miles has a bunch of those. Miles has a bunch of moments that aren't the revelation moments, but are the I'm at my lowest point, or I'm at high, or I'm having fun, or oh man, how do I tell my mom or not tell my mom I'm off doing something? How do I explain that? No, I'm still looking for coconut milk, mom. That's what's going on. Like we
Mm.
have this whole interchange there that is, I think, uniquely different than the Peter we got to play as in PS4, where for the most part, the people you're talking to, I guess that's an exaggeration. Mary Jane knows you're Peter. And I guess in the same way, Spider-Man, Genki knows you're Spider-Man in this one as well. I don't know. I felt like that notwithstanding, there was more of a journey here that I really
Yeah.
appreciated.
And I agree with that too. Miles Morales as a character, like even separating Miles Morales from his Spider-Man persona, I think Miles Morales is fantastic. All the characters connected to him, whether it is Genki or his mom or whoever, I think they did a really good job with making you care about the different relationships. One of the trailers that we saw, I want to say a few months ago, where he's like walking through Harlem, and it's through like
Mm.
I forget exactly what's happening. I think it was like a
It's the street
campaign,
festival, right? Yeah.
or maybe it's the street festival where the campaign is going on at.
Yeah.
As he's walking through, the interactions that you can have in that moment with different characters, I think are really cool and do a really good job of not only expressing who Miles is as a character, but to like what you said earlier, expressing Harlem as a character and
Yeah.
like Miles' relationships with these different characters and how, yeah, like he's new here, but he's like the more and more he lives here, the more and more he starts to gain that connection with people, both as Miles and as Spider-Man, which I think is
Yep.
really impressive. Like there's the mission that people were talking about, I guess a couple weeks ago, where the whole bodega cat thing, the bodega cat that was
Yeah.
missing that Miles finds and brings back, and the cat's name is Spider-Man and all this stuff, and he has that interaction. Like those are the moments where I think this game shines the most. And that's why I say, like, I think the first half, and I'll even say like the first 75% of the story is magnificent because there is a lot of that in there. Like, especially toward the beginning, I feel like they front load a lot of that stuff. Whereas toward the end, that's where I started to get like, ooh, I wish this had more time to breathe because there's so much here that works so well. And toward the end, it is so focused on, all right, this is what the villain's up to. All right, we got to stop the villain from doing this thing. Okay, the villain is making some really big leaps, and for me personally, I was like, I don't know where these leaps are coming from. I don't know
Sure.
why the villain won't just like take a step back.
Take a
But
breath. Think
Yeah,
about this.
like take a breath, like let's think about this. Like I feel like for a lot of this game, can be solved in terms of like the main campaign thrust. I feel like a lot of it can be solved if everybody took a step back and took a breath. And if
Sure.
also if another guy who I'm not going to mention for this review, if another guy would just calm down a little bit because he is a lot. Um, but like overall, right? Like the story is fun, the story is good, and yeah, especially that first half to first 75% of the story
Yeah.
has a lot of those moments that I think really cement Miles and really develop his character and make him uh or have us go on that journey with him to where he is becoming a natural Spider-Man, which I think is great. And I guess yeah, I just think it's great. Like I just want to commend them on that because I think they nailed that.
I think all of that comes back to what this game has in spades and makes it special, I think, and that's heart. And I know that's a weird
Mhm.
thing to hang on a video game or whatever, but everything we've been talking about, whether it's Harlem, the city, or the section of the city being a character, right? Whether it is this supporting cast that you see over and over again, that again, like I'm like Haley Copper is this like street artist, right? That they debuted again in Files and talked about already, and it's just like the fact that at the end of that, I'm Googling who she is to find out that no, she was invented for this thing and she's just there. And again, she doesn't play like at all a pivotal role in this game. She's a person in Harlem that Miles and Spider Man interact with. And you're like, oh, okay. And then the fact that this is always, I think, one of those key Greg Miller things, but to the next day after I had beaten this and done a majority of the side stuff, I did it late at night. And, Jen and I woke up and went for a hike and we were out there and I was talking about the game and there were two different things I talked about in this game that obviously will remain nameless here that I literally got choked up talking about. Like that's how much and how well done that's how much Miles means to me and how well done a character he is. That I can sit there and be telling you about something that I found emotionally irrelevant the night before and get choked up just it is saying what it is because
Mhm.
again to Najid's performance, it's so powerful, and the way Insomniac has written this and set this up that it is holy shit do I care about this kid and what he's going through. And again, there's the moments where I'm like, oh my god, why would you make that decision? There are the moments where, oh my god, why would you say that? Because he's very much a year six for well, I guess 1 year of being Spider-Man, right? Just
Mhm.
saying things where you're like, that would kind of give away your Spider-Man. Why would you say? But it's still funny and it works for the universe that they've built of like who he is and what he's doing. The game has so much heart in it.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And like I mentioned, before that I'm probably going to come off as super negative. And the reason why I stress that is because I think this game is great. Like I think the game is awesome. And most of where I'm coming from as far as like the confliction is my expectation for it. And like with that, for me playing through this game, I felt like it kind of lived for all the things we're talking about with Miles and his relationships and the soundtrack and all these different things. The game still kind of lives in the shadow of both Spider-Man 2018, which was expected because it's an iteration of that,
Sure.
and also Into the Spider-Verse, which
Yes.
we just got like very freshly, and that game, like, or that movie is for me at this point very synonymous with Miles as a character, and
100%.
this game kind of goes for a lot of the similar things where it does have a licensed soundtrack that pulls from even like similar artists. Like I'm not going to ruin the music that's in the game, but there are like there are same artists on that Miles Morales or Into the Spider-Verse soundtrack that are on the Spider-Man Miles Morales soundtrack. In a way where it's like, okay, yeah, you guys are very clearly emulating this. Miles has the scene in the game where he has his headphones on and is listening to music and all this
Yeah.
stuff. And you know, I like again, like I don't want to take that away from the game because I it's still great. Like they still do a good job with the story. They do a good job with the character, but it's so hard for me to like separate those two things of I just played 2018 and I just watched Into the Spider-Verse. And both these things I'd say I liked more than Spider-Man Miles Morales, but Spider-Man Miles Morales I'd be in love with Spider-Man Miles Morales if I didn't get those two other things. I think is like the weird thing I'm kind of balancing is like I've gotten so much Spider-Man uh within the last few years that jumping into Miles Morales now, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is more of that. And I love more of that. And this is a cool flavor of that. But I've gotten so much of that, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, and I do think you're right that I do think the how good Into the Spider-Verse was, and how for sure that cemented who Miles Morales was to so many people. I do think that this game suffers because of that. Not in a way like, oh my God, it's not enjoyable, but there are definitely a few lines in there that I won't spoil because I'd love to say them, but like that
Mm,
are like a bit softened of a blow because it is you're like anybody can wear the mask. You can wear the
yeah,
mask, right? Of like
that
you
kind of thing. Yeah,
we've seen Miles's journey on film done perfectly. And so then to go and play Miles's journey, I think again, in the same boat, I think everybody would be on a different level of hype for it if they hadn't already seen it. I think again, it's well done here. I think it's different enough. I think it does change the narrative so that you're not playing through Into the Spider-Verse. But there are not beat for beat moments, but there are those moments where it's like, oh yeah, I kind of remember this. You know what I mean? Gear up scene or whatever from Into the Spider-Verse. Like
yeah.
it sucks
Like,
that this is hampered because of that.
and there are definitely like some clear inspirations that the game takes from Into the Spider-Verse, and like they're
Like
good
the suit,
inspirations. Like you should, like yeah, like this, like the suit, and like you
the suit
should
from
take
Into the Spider-Verse.
inspiration from Into the Spider-Verse because Into the Spider-Verse is
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. Um, but yeah, like I mean, I guess we probably could talk about suits too because the suits are awesome in this game.
Well, I want to get into that for sure. I want to keep moving. I think the one thing a lot of people are going to be asking is what John Lastrina asked when he wrote into patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, just like you can. We've been going for, I can't see what, 30 minutes probably? Yeah, 31 minutes, 30 minutes here. And John, we haven't addressed this. How does Miles Morales feel? Is there an instant satisfaction like the original game? This first half has been still hung up on comparing it to Spider-Man and talking about story and heart and all that jazz. We're forgetting, of course, games are things you play.
Mm.
Blessing. How does Miles Morales feel?
I think it feels as great as 2018. Like again, like when I say iteration, right? Like it doesn't for me the combat didn't feel that different except for the new abilities which they gave Miles, which I really like. And so you
Yeah.
have things like his Venom abilities, right? Like his Venom punch and stuff like that where that adds a whole new uh uh I guess angle from like how you're fighting where it is you have if you use your Venom punch you're then stunning enemies in a way where once you upgrade that, you can stun multiple of them at a time, and that then affects how you play. You have the I don't know what he calls it, like the invisibility thing, where like you can go invisible for a second or so, and then that
Camouflage, right? He just uses a
yeah, I
camouflage.
guess it's just camouflage. That then affects how you go about stealth and stuff, and that also affects like a detection, right? Which I think is great because I for these types of games, especially for Spider-Man, especially comparing Spider-Man to something like Batman, where Batman, king of stealth, if I get caught, I should be punished. As Spider-Man, I feel like the camouflage is this added lenience that I really dig because
Yeah.
I don't really think of Spider-Man as a stealth game, even though 2018 and Miles Morales has these stealth elements that they put in there. And so for the fact that they give you all these different ways in which you can do stealth, but not do stealth in a way that it feels slow and plotting or like a Metal Gear Solid or Ghost of Tsushima or in Batman, right? Like you can do like quick stealth in this game, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. They've pared down the different web abilities, like the R1. And so like in 2018, I want to say Peter had like God, I can't remember like
You talking
eight,
about the gadget
nine?
wheel?
The gadget wheel, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Peter had way
Hold
more
on. I just
gadgets.
looked it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8.
8 yeah, Peter had 8 gadgets. Miles has twice or not twice, half as much,
Yeah, it's
or
4.
half as many. He has 4, which I don't mind because I don't think in 2018 I even used half my gadgets, and so,
Yeah.
if anything, this system probably works a bit better.
This
Um,
is back to what I was talking about, where I
mm,
think this Insomniac did everything better here based on what they learned with Spider-Man 2018. And I think the fact of going in and being like, all right, we gave Peter so many gadgets, and granted, he's the science guy, so he should. And granted, they need to figure out a way to make Miles feel different. Stripping Miles back to 4, right, which are his web shooters, hollow drone, remote mine, and gravity well. That's it, right?
mm,
Strip it back to those core 4, but then add in Venom Attack. And so, again, what you're talking about is when you're fighting, there's another yellow meter underneath your health bar, right, that fills in. And as that fills in segments, you can then use these Venom Attacks, which basically mean that as before, when you'd be in a tough fight as Peter and you'd run out of gadgets, now it was just based on what you're going to do and can you get your combo up to do a finisher. With Miles now, you have this thing where you're doing enough or even dodging and earning a bit of the yellow venom, right? That eventually you're going to be able to do a cool move to get you out of a jam, to keep combat flowing, to not make it feel like you're running your head into a wall over and over again, trying to grind out getting another gadget. Like, I do think it makes combat not easier, but more friendly, if that makes sense. It gives
Yes.
another dimension to it.
Yeah, it gives you something else to think about in terms of what is in your arsenal. And shout out to this game. Like we talking about the things that I think they fixed from Spider-Man 2018. There's not a what's it called Sable? Where was it the Sable
Yeah.
units?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's no Sable in this game.
But
Like
they're
Sable
flying
and
jetpack dudes who stand right out of range. You're like, oh my god,
yeah,
fuck
with
off!
like
Stop shooting
rocket
at these
launchers.
rockets. Yeah,
Yeah, like Sable in 2018, I thought were super annoying, and thankfully, Spider-Man Miles Morales doesn't have that. Like, there's no faction of enemies that makes things feel impossible to handle. Like everything feels way more smoother in terms of how combat
yes,
rolls, and like somewhat
there is a
easier.
rhythm.
But yeah, there's way more of a rhythm as opposed to oh crap, three Sable people are in the air shooting rocket launchers at me, and there's no way I can dodge all of them. Cool, now I'm paused. You don't have that. Like in Miles Morales, I always feel like if I get hit, it is definitely my fault.
Totally.
And like that's what I want from this game where I have superpowers and I'm fighting like criminals on the street. And so I appreciate that. I also want to give a shout out because, and I want to ask you,
Yeah.
what mode have you been playing the game on? Like between fidelity and performance?
Oh, yeah. Hold on. I have a question for you about that. Ghost of
Oh,
NY wrote into patreon.com/kindoffunnygames and said, did you prefer performance mode for Miles over the mode with ray tracing being fidelity? With such a quick moving game, I would think ray tracing is nice to look at, but performance mode was more enjoyable gameplay wise. Personally, I was in performance the whole entire way. Fidelity mode looks great. And for the record, so does performance mode. But yeah, the 60 frames per second action of performance mode, I felt flowed better with what was happening. How did you do,
yeah.
Wes?
I did I was switching back and forth pretty much the whole time, but for the first 2 hours I was playing in fidelity mode, and my roommate came through and was like, "Oh yeah, like have you tried changing the performance or changing to performance mode?" Because Michael, my roommate, has been reviewing like hardware units like between Xbox and PC and all this different stuff.
You
And
can read his review of Yakuza Like a Dragon right now
yeah,
on GameSpot.com.
GameSpot.com. And so like he's been in it like in terms of performance versus fidelity and how many hertz is important to a certain game and all this different stuff, right? So he's like, "Oh yeah, try switching it to performance mode." And oh my god, performance mode! Performance mode is probably gonna be my go-to for
Yeah.
this upcoming gen. Like it is so smooth playing Miles Morales in performance mode. And I switching back to fidelity again. Fidelity looks great, but for me doesn't make enough of a difference to where I'd play it over performance mode. At least for this type of game where it is an action game, and
Mhm.
so that has been actually one of the biggest takeaways from playing this game on a next gen console, where how smooth it is actually adds to the amount of fun I'm having. Like I don't want to stop playing this game in 60 frames per second, especially
Sure.
like a game like because in performance mode it does like it I think it pretty much upscales to 4K in some sort of way where it's not like true 4K like in fidelity mode, but it figures out the 4K-ness. 60 FPS and 4K, oh my god, it is incredible. And yeah, I think that adds so much to the combat for me and how the game feels to play.
I mean, that's the thing is, you would have said talking about Spider-Man PS4 how good combat felt and how fluid it was. I think it is the power of the PlayStation 5. It is the performance mode. It is whatever, but it does feel even slicker here, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like the into the what we're talking about, I think where they found that sweet spot from Spider-Man 2018 of giving you enough on the board to fight, having it be challenging for sure, because there are plenty of the tinkerers people that are like, all right, cool, I have the big metal gloves on, which mean I can't be attacked this way. Okay, cool, I have a shield, which means you have to do a certain venom attack to take that down. Like they mix things in where you're not just button mashing. You need to have an order of command here in terms of how you're going to take it down. But it's not the annoying Sable stuff. And so when you're in there and it's flowing between enemies, and yeah, you're doing the finisher, so you're getting those slowdowns or the between legs as you take people over, you're pulling people in the air and slam, like you do all this stuff and it feels good. It feels slick. It feels smooth, which is what obviously we all said about Spider-Man PS4 to begin with. So to have it here and be like, the web swinging, doing the thing where you're, L3 or L3 at the ground,
Yeah.
right? So you pick up speed and then you see the ripples in the costume and then you swing at the last second. Like it feels awesome. Like how does it feel to be Miles Morales? It feels awesome.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And like a lot of people are pointing out, because I think they put this in the marketing that Smiles kind of swings different from Peter because he is an
Yeah.
inexperienced Spider-Man, and they put that in the animation. And I want to give a shout out because yeah, like I think that is very noticeable, like the way he swings. I love the way where when you run off a building, the way he jumps off, it is very Miles Morales, right? Like it is kind of how he jumps off the building into the Spider-Verse, and he swings in his own way. But despite that, it still feels great. Like it feels pretty much the exact same, if not like a tad bit smoother than in Spider-Man 2018. Yet, meanwhile, keeping in that same animation to make it look like he is like fumbling, and there are certain points, and I forget if
He
they
does
had
like
this.
the tumble through the air, and I'm not even talking about the
Mm,
stunts. He does that thing where he kind of spins off sometimes, where
yes,
it's not great. It's graceful, but it's not graceful like when Pete would do it.
exactly. And in 2018, they had the stunts you could do.
Yeah,
Were you able to? I found in this game when I'm stunting and I'm not like paying attention or whatever, or I mess up and I hit the ground, I do like a thud. Did they have that in 2018? Because I don't think I ever had that happen to me.
like faceplant thud or
Like I'm still spinning, hit the ground, and it's like a like pretty much like I bounce off the ground. Like I like definitely like in a way where it's like Miles did not mean to do that. Like a face plant
oh, I
bouncing
yeah,
off the
there was
ground.
something in 2018 Spider-Man when you
Okay.
do be doing tricks and you were in the middle of a spin for some reason and you landed on the ground. They would make it be like that wasn't a smooth way to do that, Spidey.
Gotcha. Yeah, I definitely had to happen to me a few times in this game, and I thought each time I was like, that is hilarious. I'm glad
Yeah.
that they have that in here.
Yeah, again, I feel, back to just gameplay in general to put a pin in this, I guess, is like it is a smaller game, which again I like. I like the scope of it. I like this continuation of what we know, and I like that. For me personally, there wasn't the eye roll moments that I would have had in Spider-Man PS4 of just getting into a fight. I remember being so annoyed at the Electro fight in Spider-Man PS4. I'm just like, oh god, I like, or maybe yeah, it was Electro and Vulture, right? Getting up and fighting them or
Yeah.
whatever. And this, like, that was I didn't have that here. I didn't have those moments here, and that is, I think, uh, the fact that they trimmed away the fat. I think it's the fact that, and I mean, in terms of the story, trimmed away the fat, but in terms of the gameplay, where the web shooters, the holodrones, the remote mines, the gravity well, all of them, I was versed in by the end of it. It wasn't like where I remember for trophies or whatever when I'm going through in Spider-Man PS4 and be like, what does this even do? I never really use this weapon. And it's the same thing for skill
Mhm.
trees. There's the skill trees for combat, venom, and camouflage skills. And again, exploring those out, like you're gonna have them all. Well, yeah, you have to do a new game plus to get some of them, but you will have the majority of them obviously by the time you finish your game. And it felt like a natural build. It felt like it made sense because it was Miles and it was fun to do all of that.
Yeah, yeah. And my skill tree, like I still felt like I had choice in there too, where I toward the first half of the game I was not using any of the camouflage abilities, and I was like,
Yeah.
why would I upgrade that at all? And I filled up my other two skill trees, and toward the end where I was like, oh no, this can actually be helpful. That's when I started filling in that stuff, and now I actually am on a new game plus playthrough, and I'm like, dude, I cannot wait to actually get those new abilities for new game plus. Even though I want to ask you, how do you feel about the way in which they've implemented New Game Plus with the new abilities, but then also making it so that you have to get a New Game Plus trophy in order to get the platinum.
Never a fan of a new game plus trophy. I
Mm,
enjoy, especially for an open world game, I like the idea of it's my world. I've done all the things. I've finished the main storyline. So at the end, now I'm gonna go clean stuff up and finish it off that way. I appreciate that. However, as short as like I don't have the new game plus trophy in Spider-Man PS4, right? Granted, it was because they added in after the fact and it didn't apply to the platinum. Like if Spider-Man remastered drops and there's a trophy in there that is do a new game plus, I'm gonna be like, oh fuck, really? Because like that's a much longer campaign. Whereas Spider-Man Miles Morales, when you're skipping all the cutscenes and you know what you're doing and you're just mainlining stuff, and then you're doing like one of the easy challenges to advance it when it's like go do something before I'll call you or whatever. Like you can climb. I climbed that out in a day for them, right? I think the most part. Maybe I did like an hour the day before, but it was like super quick. I'm just like boom, 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 and done. And you can climb
mm,
out the main story obviously in a day with watching the cutscenes. So I didn't hate it, but I don't love that. And so I would have
mm.
preferred to have it all in one go in one main save. How do you feel?
Usually I don't like it. Like that they did the same thing in Final Fantasy VII Remake, and that was the thing that made me go, I'm not gonna get the platinum. As I started my New Game Plus save, I'm
Huh?
like, dude, the story the story like flies by. Like you mentioned, you can knock it out in pretty much a day. And like I started it last night and played maybe like 45 minutes to an hour. And when I was booting it up today, it was like 13% done. And I was like, 13%? Damn, that's a lot for how little I played yesterday.
Yeah.
But like the story it's good enough and it seems replayable enough in terms of like it's not replayable like a cyberpunk where it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna get all these
Something
different
different's gonna
stories.
happen.
Yeah, something different's gonna happen. But it seems replayable in the sense that like it's a fun laid back story. This is the most Marvel movie,
Yeah.
Marvel game that I think I've played, where it
Yeah.
is like in the way that you would rewatch Spider-Man: Homecoming or the way that you'd rewatch an Iron Man 2, I guess. Like that's kind of how I feel about Miles Morales, where I'm like, yeah, the story was really like I almost wish I had popcorn for like the cutscenes in this game where
Sure.
I could
Yo,
like
they're
sit
great,
back and like
right?
yeah, no, like it is a very digestible, straightforward, fun story that I don't mind replaying because like
No.
you said, it's pretty quick. And so
I enjoy
I don't hate it.
there was definitely times in there where I didn't skip cutscenes on my replay because they
Mhm,
were so good and that was a good beat. And it's also the fact that better than most games, I would say Miles Morales does an amazing job of bookending, where it starts in one spot and then at the very end, like has the alternate take of that or what it's like now in this thing. And there's a bunch of little touches too that we'll get into spoiler casts of like, oh wow, I get it because Miles's whole journey is that he's new to town here, right? He's moved to Harlem, they've relocated. He's still getting his feet as Spider-Man, let alone getting his feet as this. And he is a New Yorker, but he doesn't feel like he's a Harlem person. And like it's cool to see him grow in both those roles. And again, like I always go back to, a conversation I had probably at a Comic-Con on a panel, but a conversation I had with Bill Roseman from Marvel Games, who talked about, the best Spider-Man when we were talking about Spider-Man PS4 stories are ones where it's equal parts Peter and it's equal parts Spider-Man having the conflict. And I
mhm,
think that's what this game nails. They clearly take that and are like, that's exactly what this is going to be, which anchors it so well and gives it so much where it is that not only is Miles dealing with feeling like he's this imposter Spider-Man, he's feeling like he's this imposter New Yorker and trying to figure
mhm.
out like who he is going forward is powerful and cool to go through and do.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this is to put in the perspective of this is a PlayStation 5 launch game, I think it is a great one. Like I think
Hell yeah. Oh yeah.
the like right now, like as far as like launch lineup is looking for PS5, like it is gearing up to be something special. Like
Yeah.
I guess yeah, I'll just stop there. Yeah.
Well, we've right now our Astros Playroom review is up
Yeah.
as well, but that's what we've played and that we can talk about or that we even have, so don't worry about it. Blessing, you asked me about the new Game Plus thing, which of course led to that trophy. You were asking me about the trophy. I want to bring Assassinina, who wrote in to patreon.com/kindoffunnygames and says, do you think Miles Morales will be a game that many folks will platinum in much the same way that people did for Spider-Man? Is it easier, shorter, better? Specifically, I'm assuming about trophies is what you're talking about. Again, I think it is Insomniac learning from exactly what they're doing the last time around and all the feedback they got. Obviously, it's shorter. It's, a shorter game. Like I said, you can have it done easily in a weekend, right? I got mine on Friday and platinum mine. I could have platinumed it Monday, but I think I ended up platinum on a Tuesday just because of how everything netted out. And that wasn't me playing nonstop. That was me playing, nonstop Saturday to finish the story and then fuck around time the rest of the times. But again, even this new game plus trophy, which I don't think is annoying as it could have been if the game was super long, it's the idea of how much they listened to what people did not like about Spider-Man PS4. And obviously, I remember for me, for Spider-Man PS4, at the end, doing the mop up of random crimes. So you're
Oh
just
yeah.
swinging around the city, waiting for
Yeah.
something to happen, waiting for something to happen in these districts. They do an amazing job here of adding in something called the Friendly Neighborhood app that Genki makes 4 miles so he can keep an eye on what's going on. And it's basically your side mission log. So it has all the side missions there, but then in like little tasks. They're not all, again, this is very much, hey, Spider-Man, do a backflip. Like it's that kind of friendly neighborhood stuff, right? Of like, oh, help, find the cat. The cat's missing kind of thing. They also have a tab though that is crimes going on, so you can generate the crime you want to go do or need to go do, because of course you're getting rewarded with tokens. If you do all the optional objectives, which you can then turn around to spend on upgrading your gadgets or unlocking one of the 19 suits in the game. So again, they very, very smartly, I think, eliminated the randomness of the random crimes so that they
Mhm.
are still randomly happening. You swing around, it'll happen around you. But if you need to go off and do something or you just want to go do something, you can find it that way.
Yeah, I think the Friendly Neighborhood app is a really great addition. Also, shout out to Genki as a character. I really like his
So good.
character. It's very like very awesome character. But yeah, like in terms of the question, do you think more people or less people are going to platinum this one than the previous one? I would imagine less because for Spider-Man 2018, because you didn't have to do New Game Plus, so many people are down to just clear out a map. I think more people are down to 100% a thing rather
Mm.
than replay a thing for a platinum trophy. Even though I could be
Yeah.
wrong because if I had to guess, I would guess that the platinum trophy for Miles Morales is probably quicker than 2018
It
technically.
is. Yeah. Yeah.
Just because 2018 is a longer game and there are more activities. Um, but I think the ask to replay the game might
It's
throw
gonna
people
scare
off.
people off.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. I would think based on I think more people. It's hard to say because now you're talking about per capita, right? We're not talking about more people. Obviously, Spider-Man Miles Morales is not going to sell as many copies as Spider-Man PS4 did. He says, and then PlayStation puts out
Mm.
this
I
release
mean,
in a
it's on
couple weeks.
PS4 also.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess it's including PlayStation 4, isn't it? Actually, yeah. I still don't think it'll sell as well. I want to believe it will. I do, but I think that
I mean, we're
there's
talking
still.
about Miles Morales. I feel like that name holds some weight nowadays.
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess.
Like, it's
I
not
mean,
like
is
Lost Legacy
people
where
understand
everybody is
it?
like, "This ain't Nathan Drake." Like, Miles Morales,
Yeah.
I feel like actually sells it.
Hmm. Okay.
We'll
Okay.
see though. Because I'm with you. I don't know if this game sells as much as Spider-Man 2018 or sells as fast.
It's that thing where we're huge dorks, and obviously Miles Morales is bigger than ever. Don't get me wrong, but like, does that name speak to people? Like when you look at Spider-Man PS4 and you look at Spider-Man on the cover, you're like, oh, it's Spider-Man. Here you look at it, and
Mhm.
it is Miles. Like, and I don't know if that, if people are like, oh, Spider-Man's in a black suit now. No, thank you. I don't know. I don't know if that's really how it works, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
I was just.
You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and say this game sells faster than Spider-Man. I'm gonna say it. Because I
Okay.
think when you factor in it's the big PlayStation 5 launch title, and then
Yeah.
look at the fact that it's also on PS4, and then
Yeah.
Miles Morales also being a popular thing nowadays, I think like I see where you're coming from, like people like Spider-Man, period. But I think saying Spider-Man but then adding in Miles Morales adds a
No,
level
you're
of
right.
hype
You're
and
making great
anticipation
points.
to
It's
it.
something it's a question I had not thought of. I had not really
Mhm.
thought of like our. I think you're right that New Game Plus will scare people off, but I also think that if you care that much about trophies, you're going to look at it and go, "Oh, but I'm already." I remember how fast this was. Not to mention, you'll want to experience. I think you will want to experience those moments again, because
Mhm.
again, it's like any other time you rewatch anything. The game does a great job of, you know, there's a point where Miles, talks about being a fish out of water in Harlem, and how he has to like ask for directions and he hates that. And I was like, really? And then when you go back and rewatch the opening, I'm like, oh, I guess he does. Like, I guess I see that a little bit, but not me being excited to sit down with this game and play this game. I didn't pay attention that Miles like small struggles there in terms of
Yeah.
that. So I like going back with that context. I like seeing, characters, their fate. You talk to them early and see what were they doing and how are they playing it and stuff like that. So you're saying it's going to sell better? You think it's going to sell more copies?
That's a tough question.
It is on
I
2 platforms, and I mean, it's going to sell. If you're buying a
what
PlayStation 5, I have to
yeah.
imagine the attach rate is going to be ridiculous.
Yeah. It depends on what the parameters. Like, are we saying faster selling or like
I don't
sell
know.
actually
I don't
like
know. We haven't
what's
even
gonna
talked about it.
because like selling more copies that we're gonna have to like judge that years down the line
Yeah.
at a certain point. Unless like we say which has the better first 3 week sales or better first month sales or something like that. That's difficult. I'm gonna say Miles Morales because I think people look at this game as a follow up to 2018, and usually sequels sell better.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm gonna say I think it sells faster and better.
I mean, remember, like Spider-Man was the fastest selling first party game,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Game sold over 3.3 million copies in its first 3 days. You know what? Yeah, you're right. Let's get nuts. It's going to beat
yeah.
that. Spider-Man Miles Morales is going to beat that.
Like the only reason I can think of for it not to beat that is because it is more iterative. Like it doesn't feel like this brand new huge big like it doesn't feel as much of a brand new huge big thing as Spider-Man 2018 did. But that said, like what
But doesn't everybody want more Spider-Man? Like, that's the
And that's
thing.
the
Is like, I
thing,
don't think
yeah.
that's the problem. I understand and I appreciate that criticism and I like this conversation we've had, but I don't think that that's going to be such a turnoff to people. Even if you just go, yeah, it's more Spider-Man. It's like, great. It's one of the best fucking PlayStation games.
Yeah.
It feels again like one of the best superhero games we've ever played. Fuck yeah,
Yeah,
let's
and
get more of
I'm
that.
thinking of it in the sense that I assume that that Lost Legacy sold less than Uncharted 4,
Sure.
but, Miles Morales compared to Spider-Man, I feel like it's just a different thing. Like, it's a
You're right.
different way of marketing and branding.
I agree with you. I don't think, and this is with all due respect to, of course, Nadine and Chloe, right? Like, I don't think Miles Morales is as obscure as they are, right? Like, if
Yeah.
Uncharted, Nathan Drake. Maybe you weren't thinking when you saw his two, well, one time a villain, well, I guess another time, you know what I mean? His two friends on the cover. You're like, oh, yeah, that's what I got to do. Whereas Miles looks like Spider-Man. And, like, again, you probably know Spider-Man at this point. If you own a PlayStation, you're ready to play this thing. I'm going to say it. It's going to beat it. It's going to, so we're saying the
I
first
agree.
3 days, it'll sell more than 3.3 million copies. Going off variety.
Was that the first 3 days for
Yeah, I'm
2018?
reading
Oh, man. Yeah, okay.
Stefan
Yeah, you know what?
Fogel
I'll
at
say it.
Variety.
Yeah. I'll say it,
Spider-Man
yeah.
Deep Throne's God of War is the fastest selling title. Insomniac game Spider-Man is now the fastest selling first party PlayStation title. Sony announced on Thursday. The game sold over 3.3 million copies in its first 3 days.
See, this is it a free upgrade from Miles Morales PS4? It is. See, it gets tough because now I'm thinking how many people who aren't getting a launch PS5 hold off on getting Miles Morales
Oh,
until they
shit.
actually get one next year.
That is a good point.
Because I think in the end of the I think it ends up maybe selling more copies at the end of the day, but it's the fastest selling thing that's scaring me a little bit. All the different factors at play.
It's a great fucking call, actually. Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, I wouldn't want to play it on PlayStation 4 if I was getting my Spider-Man at Christmas. Wait, hold on. I wouldn't want to play it on PlayStation 4 if I was getting my PS5 at Christmas.
PS5 at Christmas, yeah.
Yeah. Shit,
Tough.
that's a great wrinkle. That's a great wrinkle,
Tough.
Bless. Good job. It should sell more, but we'll see.
Yeah. You said 2018 sold 3.4 million?
3.3.
3.3? I'm going to say at the very least 2.9 million.
Okay. We'll see. See if they can put that number out if they don't. Now I have too much to think about. Ladies and gentlemen, while I crunch more on this, let's hear a word from our sponsors. This episode of the Kind of Funny Gamescast is brought to you by Upstart. There's a lot of economic chatter right now about the state of the market. Is it recovering? How long will it take? Have we seen the worst? But if you're struggling to pay off high interest credit card debt, you can't wait for those answers. You need to take action. Now with Upstart, there's actually something you can do today to help fight off high interest credit card debt. Upstart is the revolutionary online lending platform that knows you're more than just a credit score. Unlike other lenders, Upstart can reward you based on your job history in the form of a smarter rate. Upstart lets you skip going to the bank because it's completely online. They offer loans from $1,000 to $50,000, so you can consolidate your debt into one easy fixed rate payment. Upstart makes it fast and simple to check your rate. Since it's just a soft pull, it won't affect your credit score. The hard pull happens if you accept your rate and proceed with your application. The best part, if the loan is approved and accepted, most people get their funds the very next business day. Over 500,000 people have used Upstart to pay off credit cards or meet their financial goals, and you should too. I took out a loan years and years and years ago that did not take any of this into account, and my rate stunk. Don't be like me. Be like Upstart. Free yourself from the burden of high interest credit card debt and get back to using your money your way with Upstart. See why Upstart has over 6,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, and hurry to upstart.com/kinda to find out how low your Upstart rate can be. Checking your rate takes only a few minutes. That's upstart.com/kinda. Your loan amount will be determined based on your credit, income, and certain other information provided in your loan application. Not all applicants will qualify for the full amount. And our next sponsor, why? It's Guideline. Offering a 401k sends a great message to your employees. It says you have their back. When it comes to choosing a 401k provider for them, which one will have yours? Small businesses have a lot on their to-do list, and finding an affordable 401k is a tough task. But with Guideline, you can cross it off your list and start saving with ease. Choosing the right retirement plan for your employees can be complicated, and you're busy. You're a small business owner, right? With Guideline, your 401k plan can be simple and seamless. Guideline provides easy and affordable 401k plans for small businesses and startups. Whether you're offering an employee retirement plans or for the first time, or you want to make changes to their current retirement benefits, they design a plan to fit your needs. You can set it up in as little as 10 minutes. Guideline handles the admin, compliance testing, record keeping, and investment management. There are no separate setup costs, no added investment fees, and monthly fees start at only $39 plus $8 for each employee. And they integrate with popular payroll providers. Over 13,000 companies use Guideline to manage their 401ks. With a Guideline 401k, you and your employees can save money while saving for retirement. For a limited time, you can go to guideline.com/kindafunny and tell them you came from the Kinda Funny Gamescast, and you can get a $100 gift card when you start your 401k plan with Guideline. That's guideline.com/kindafunny to get a 401k for your business. Don't forget guideline.com/kindafunny. Tell them the Gamescast sent you. All right, blessing. We're back. Mad Chemist wrote into patreon.com/kindafunnygames.
It sounds like a Spider-Man villain.
It does. Good morning, crew. What I would like to ask is Spider-Man Miles Morales just a new coat of paint of NYC? I loved the first game, but after grinding out the platinum, I was bored of the city and the numerous street crime requirements per district. Did you feel New York was new enough for you, Blessing?
That's a tough question because I think the answer for me is probably no, but that's like the
Okay.
least of my complaints when it comes to the game. Like I think we all expected for this map to pretty much just be the same map from 2018. Like if we're talking about a new coat of paint, and like yeah, like the game takes place in winter, and like that's about it. I think there are tweaks here and there as far as like certain buildings being restructured and stuff. Like it's a year later, and so take that for what you will.
Yeah.
As far as the setting of this game, but it is pretty much the same New York. And I guess like to Mad Chemist's question, right? Like I love the first game, but after grinding for the platinum, I was bored of the city after the numerous street crime requirements per district. There's less of that because of what Greg mentioned earlier with the app and how you can toggle stuff on if you want. And also I think there are just less crime/activities in general. Like I think there's a smaller selection. That said, the new coat of paint phrasing is very interesting because the one of the things I really liked about 2018 is the different types of activities you had and how they were kind of spread throughout the map as like icons and stuff. Like
Yeah.
usually in games, I'm not a big fan of checking off checklists and going through icons, but in Spider-Man 2018, very much different. Didn't mind it because it felt more of like a playground than a huge discoverable open world. And so if I'm playing in this playground, yeah, give me the icons. So I'll go through and I'll collect the backpacks that like Peter for some reason hit around the city, and I'll do
He forgot about them. It wasn't that he hid them. He like,
it's
he
so
had to go
weird.
be Spider-Man, so he tossed his bag and then he'd forget about his bag.
It seems like a problem. It seems like he should address that.
I
Like,
mean, his backpack budget would be like $20,000. Yeah, it was a huge
yeah.
problem.
And I like doing that. I like the well, I'm not gonna say I liked, but the environmental missions were there, and like you had like the different stuff there, right? In this game, the you have activities, but they just feel like the new coat of paint phrasing is really interesting because it does feel like all right, cool. Instead of backpacks, what if we just did like a what do they call them? The things you bury and then like
Time
find
capsules.
time capsules, right? Like we'll have time capsules that Peter put all or the Miles put all over the place. We'll have the side missions, which are similar from the side missions from 2018, but then we'll also have these recording activities, which are a really cool thing. We'll also have this, and that. Like it's different types of activities, but the same, like pretty much the same
It's the
loop.
same idea.
Yeah, same
It's
idea.
yeah, and that's yeah. I'm with you that new coat of paint for NYC is an interesting way of putting it, because yes, it's the same city, right? It's Manhattan there, right? It's the island, and so yeah, it's the same city, but yeah, it is snowing, and I do think that makes it feel different. Like, I mean, if you want to talk about like the most blatant, and I use it loosely, but like, okay, there's recycling. This is like when Spider-Man interacts with somebody on the street, where it's the same like fist
Oh
bump
yeah.
or whatever. It's like, all right, I remember. I don't feel like you put new. These aren't new. I feel like these are the exact same. Who the hell cares? Nobody. It is the idea though that yes, like again, with this being so iterative of what Spider-Man was, an evolution of that, you're hitting it, Bless, right? Where it's like Peter had the challenges of taking a photo. Miles, who's into music, has this music challenge.
Yeah.
Peter hid the backpacks. Miles hid these time capsules and all these things. And like then there's different strongholds to take down, caches to find, all these things. My thing from a completionist trophy standpoint, Mad Chemist, is I love the first game, but after grinding out the platinum, I was bored of the city. I remember being there too, where it was that I enjoyed the collectibles, but I hated fighting Sable, and then it was this last thing, yada yada yada. Again, to why I think this works so well and why I like this more is that this game doesn't outstay its welcome. Like and to your point, Blessing, about like one more the new game plus shit. Like when I finished the game, I was excited to immediately jump back into New Game Plus, which I never am. And then when I
Mhm.
finished New Game Plus, I was still like, man, I could go for more. And it's why I'm excited for Spider-Man Remastered. Like it did its job in a way that it left me wanting more, which I think a lot of times games are afraid to do. Games understand that they are a 60 now $70 investment. And so they want to give you a bang for your buck and they want to just fucking fill the map with garbage for you to go do, whether it is fun or not. And to your point, Mad Chemist, I think at some point that grinds and wears you down. That didn't happen for me in Miles. I thought they did a good job of, hey, this is what it is. This is what you can go do. There are trophies in there that are similar to stuff that you've seen in terms of like more exploring the city and finding secret things. I liked that. I would have gone for even more of those. Like they do a really good job with it. I didn't, is it just a new coat of paint on NYC? Yeah, I guess literally the way we've described it and told you these
Yeah.
analogs, it is, but it also doesn't feel like it. Like I only had that feeling of like, oh man, I've done this before when I was fist bumping some villain or a villain, when I'm fist bumping some fan of Spider-Man on the street. Otherwise, it didn't feel like I'm doing the same thing I had already done.
Yeah, I felt it a little bit. I think part of that is because in 2018 that was our first experience with that
Mhm,
NYC and
mhm.
the way they're doing activities in those games. As soon as I unlocked an activity in Miles Morales and it started populating the map, I was like, "Oh, I know exactly how this is gonna go. I know exactly what this is. I've been through this loop before." And I think that's the thing that made me a little bit tired when I've been going through the activities. That said, there are less, and so like take that for what you will. There's not really I don't really, I don't think there's much I could even ask for in terms of how they restructure the world or restructure the activities, because I think what they have works. And I think what they have is fun. Like when we're talking about the gameplay of Miles Morales and the gameplay of Spider-Man in general, like it reminds me of Ghost of Tsushima a bit, where a big reason why I like Ghost of Tsushima, despite it being this open world game that doesn't feel innovative in any way, in like major ways. Like I just I just like the comfort food. I like going through
Yeah.
and play like completing tasks, like doing it, fighting in a combat system that I like. Right, Spider-Man has that similar thing going on where I'm like, all right, yeah, I do like fighting in this game. I do like swinging around the city, and I do like running on walls and stuff. And that's kind of what the activities are there for. So as long as the activities find interesting enough ways for me to just do that, then I guess I'm down with it. Like I'm into it.
And it's what you're talking about, where I think there's fewer of them. Where like the new things unlock, like, all right, I've been here before. But it is also that thing of like, I could probably do these all in one sitting.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like I can
like
do
where
10 of these. Yeah,
yeah, where it's and again, I think that the action of doing it and then the discovery of what you're doing on some of them, not all of them, is so enjoyable. Like it still has that level of fun that you want out of a game.
yeah.
Speaking of fun, you brought this up earlier. I cut you off because we weren't there yet, or I wanted to continue on the first line of thinking. Talk to me about the suits. 19 suits in the game for Spider-Man this time around.
Mm.
What did you think of them?
I think they're awesome. Everybody's been going crazy about the Into the Spider-Verse suit, and
As they
rightfully
should.
so. The suit is awesome. I kind of hinted at this a little bit during KFGD, but like the effect where it is, we're cutting down on the frame rate to emulate what's going, like the frame rate of the character animation specifically to emulate what's going on Into the Spider-Verse. I turned that off immediately, and I think the big part of that is because I'm playing on performance mode where it's 60 frames per second. And
Yeah.
so when you cut down on frame rate for the character and the game is going at 60 frames, it looks weird. It is very distracting. I did not like it.
I thought it was a
Uh,
nice addition. I thought it was a really cool thing. I was the exact same
yeah,
way. I played for like 2 minutes, maybe a mission, and then I kept the suit, but turned off the effect. Because, of course, just like Spider Man PS4, you're unlocking suit mods and you're unlocking visor mods and suit mods. So, you get the different abilities you can swap in and out. So, every suit comes with those, but then you can put them on whatever suits you want.
yeah. And like I want to say there's like less suits overall than Spider-Man 2018, because I feel
19.
like that game had a
Yeah.
billion suits.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I will say trying to find it here. It's a suit that the screenshot came out the same day Game Informer started their coverage. It's the Spider-Man 2020 suit.
Oh, I love that one with like that headset and like the what's that
Yeah.
DJ, the LED eyes.
Yes, Miles Morales 2020 suit, which you can find if you Google, I'm sure. It is my favorite suit in the game. It is so fresh. I love the jacket. He has like a Daft Punk-esque helmet, yeah, that has animation and stuff to it. It is really cool. I'm in love with it. Though most of the time I'm playing with like just the regular Miles Morales suit that's in the game. And I think that is mainly because I want to, as far as like the story campaign, I like to have it so that I
Yeah,
am playing that Miles. Like I feel like it's weird to like being now that I'm doing New Game Plus, right? Like being in the beginning portions of the game while wearing the 2020 suit just feels odd because it's like,
totally.
you're talking to you specific characters and like, or you're talking to, let's say you're talking to like Peter or whatever, and you're like
You're
wearing
having
this futuristic
serious
suit.
moments in these games.
Yeah, and you're like, bumping your headphones and like looking super fresh and stuff. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't seem right. This seems out of place. Let me go back to what I was wearing in the scene. That
I
said,
was
I
doing the same
really
thing
do like
where
the collection.
I ran through a bunch of different outfits throughout the game. I defaulted pretty much to Into the Spider Verse as well. And like when it was like, oh, we're clearly ramping up to the end of the game here, and there's like a lot of powerful stuff happening. I was like, well, let's put on the normal suit because yes,
Yeah.
it's immersion breaking to be in a very critical cutscene and cut over to animated Spidey sitting there. Like, all right, that isn't what we need right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, 19 in there. What I had done, I think it's 25 in the other one, the Spider-Man PS4 one.
Mm.
He said as he had already, I looked at it and then shut the thing. Here we go.
And you know what? I'll say it. I think I like the suits
Oh
in
no,
Miles Morales more than Spider-Man 2018.
looks
With
like
the
the.
except
Hold on one second, just let me spit out. It's
mm,
hard to say because I'm looking at the screen that I think this is all of them open, but it would have been 27 at launch that they had. But they added
mm.
more over time, obviously, so it's a little convoluted. And maybe this person hadn't unlocked them all, but there's a bunch in there. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, the 2018 had a lot of suits that I was like, I just don't like these suits.
Yeah, these are
Whereas
ugly.
yeah, Miles Morales doesn't have as much of that. Even though to the credit of 2018, the suits that they added afterwards, like post launch, I think were
Totally.
fantastic. But
That's
yeah, I
another reason I'm looking forward to playing it again, and it's remastered, right? And getting to actually
yeah,
play the whole game with like Raimi
with
or
the
Amazing
Raimi
or
suit.
whatever. Yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
is the Amazing Spider-Man suit from the movie in the game?
And then remastered, yeah,
What? I
yeah.
didn't
That
know
was
that.
one of their additions there. They tossed in for you, a little
That's really
Easter
cool.
egg
Damn,
benefit
I
for
might
you.
I might replay it then.
Shane Komet writes into patreon.com/kindafunnygames and says, Gressing, could you find gents please lay out loading time comparisons? Can we boot the old PS4 Spider-Man next to Miles Morales and see how fast we're web slinging? I think of all the next gen content stuff I'm excited for. Let me try again. I think of all the next gen stuff I'm excited about. The loading is tip top next to that controller. Uh, Shane, we could do that, but we would be dramatically wasting your time and hours. I instead quit out of Spider-Man PS5 when I read your question and then clicked on the PlayStation 5, start the game. I was from a dead screen to web slinging in 18 seconds. That's
Mm,
including like the home screen. There was something I noticed where maybe add 2 seconds for your first like PlayStation from another game. Because when I loaded it, I remember the first time before I read your question, I noticed I hung on Spider-Man Miles Morales for like a second or two longer, like him swinging, and then it went into all this. But the second time when it was, I quit out, closed the game, and opened the game again, and I saw it was like a shadow of it. This
yeah,
game, and again the PlayStation 5, but specifically in Miles Morales, it is voodoo. Like it
it
is
is.
ridiculous. Like I did not fast travel really at all in Spider-Man PS4 because sure it would be a little bit faster, but you still had to be on the subway, and so you could probably make up that time in the air or whatever. I fast traveled a ton here when I was trying to knock out trophies because it's instantaneous. It
Yeah,
is. I
it
want to
takes
fast
2
travel there.
seconds
Okay,
maybe.
and then Miles is walking up the stairs. It's like holy fucking shit. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and like you're talking when you say 18 seconds, you're talking from like the PlayStation menu.
Yeah, imagine being at your
Yeah,
live area and you click on Spider-Man PS4, but in this case, Spider-Man Miles Morales on your PlayStation 5. 18 seconds from clicking on it to then hitting, X to get past the main thing to hit X on my save, and you're in. Like I'm talking from the game isn't on yet. 18 seconds.
yeah, and for me, like I'm on my saves right now. I'm about to load a save,
Yeah.
and I hit continue. I'm in the game. Like it took 2 seconds, and if I wanted
Yeah,
to fast travel, it's about the same time. Like it is basically a fade out, fade back in.
it's
It's
ridiculous.
incredible.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
and it's
pretty
that thing
cool.
where I toyed around with the idea of like, when it gets slow, do I want to platinum it again on a PS4 version of And I was like, I don't want to deal with the load times.
Yeah,
Like
eh,
I don't want to sit there and do. I have no idea. I do not have a Spider-Man. I don't have Miles Morales PS4. Maybe the load times are also very short there. But it was that thing of like, it was such a amazing experience on this. Like, I don't want to go fuck around with it.
yeah, and I can't go back to 30 FPS. I mean, I guess on Pro, there's probably a 60 FPS option, isn't there? Still, it
Probably.
just hits different on PS5.
Maybe. Um, Final question is something we've kind of covered throughout this whole thing, Blessing, but
Mhm.
Jonathan's going to get somewhere with it. Jonathan Martin writes in to patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, just like you can. It says, beyond Greg and Blessing.
Yeah.
Ever since Sean Layden stated that smaller first party games were an inevitability in order to increase the catalog of what is now PS Studios, I have been hoping for a wave of quality titles inspired by Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, the second best Uncharted game after 2 IMO, but I digress. With Spider-Man Miles Morales, the game that convinced me to get a PS5 at launch, we have what could potentially be the first example of these shorter experiences after Lost Legacy. While the quality of the game will undoubtedly be on par with the 2018 original, I have reservations on whether the game will truly feel like the next chapter in the Spider-Man universe. My question for the panel is this: has the scale of Miles Morales hampered your enjoyment of the game? And speaking more broadly about PlayStation Studios' next gen game output, do you see this model of smaller, more focused games as a good direction for the company to pursue? Blessing, again, we talked about this at the top. You talked about, comparing it to anything else. So even
Mhm.
though we've kind of straight to the point, has the scale of Miles Morales hampered your enjoyment of the game?
A a bit, but I don't think it's the fault. I don't think it's the fault of the scale alone. I think it's more so how that scale was used. Like if I felt like the story was wrapped up in a way that felt satisfying, and I felt like the Miles Morales as a character and as a Spider-Man got the full love and attention that I think a game called Spider-Man Miles Morales could get, then I think I'd be fine and satisfied with it. I think my main issue when it comes to the scale is that I think a Miles Morales game could be much more and bigger. Like if it this game feels like a Spider-Man side story as opposed to a Spider-Man main story, and I think the the big reason why I am underwhelmed in that regard is it is Miles Morales, and I see Miles Morales as a character that should have like this big thing to him. Like there was Austin Walker quote from I think this is like during the PlayStation 5 reveal event where they're like where they revealed Miles Morales and all this different stuff, and there was that confusion on. All right, so what is it? Is it Lost Legacy or whatever? And Austin Walker had a quote where I believe it was Austin Walker. No, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure it's Austin Walker. He had the quote where he was like, uh, always the freedom cries, never the numbered sequel. And I think that's a little bit part of where my frustration comes from, where I'm like, man, like Miles Morales, a Miles Morales game that is a full Spider-Man game, that is a 15-hour, or you could even be like a 12-hour like thing, but that does feel like a big fully realized story that has all the same love and attention as a mainline game. I think that could be cool, and I think that is where my slight frustration comes from with it. But I think the model itself of, hey, let's have these lower price experiences that are smaller than the mainline games that is going to allow us to churn out more experiences. I think that's still a great model. I think they should still do that if they're even thinking about that, because who knows? But I think that would work, and I think for the most part, like this could have worked, and it does work in so many ways. Like I don't want to say this doesn't work because I
Sure.
think it does.
For me, I mean, and again, everybody's gonna have their own interpretation with it, right? The smaller scale here doesn't hamper the enjoyment. I think it enhanced it. I think it was from the moment we went into this game, I don't think it ever stopped. And Spider-Man PS4, there are the moments where I can tell you it stopped, whether it was a puzzle again in Doc Ock's lab, whether it was a Mary Jane stealth mission, whether it was et cetera, and so on. That doesn't happen here. And so to the second part of the question, do you see this model of smaller, more focused games as a good direction? Fuck yes. If they, I would, and I hear you blessing on what you're saying for sure.
Hmm.
But if Insomniac was to pivot this way and start treating this in a very interesting, weird way that doesn't exactly work, but stick with me, treating their Spider-Man universe as comic books, and we every 2 years we're getting an installment and we're getting something there. Personally, I would prefer that feed of content rather than waiting. Granted, I don't think we're going to wait another 3 years to get Spider-Man 2, but because they've already been working on stuff you would assume in line with this and tinkering with PS5.
Hmm.
But I'd prefer that. And I think it'd be interesting to see if they did move away from the numbering thing. So it's Spider-Man was Spider-Man PS4, Spider-Man Miles Morales next time around, right? Like again, spoilers for the end of Spider-Man PS4 2018, right? Seems like we're going symbiote, right? Like is it going to be Spider-Man symbiote you could put out and
Hmm.
do like that'd be an interesting naming convention, an interesting way to pull from it. And so I totally understand what you're talking about. I found it, right? Austin Walker on June 12th quote tweeted the Kotaku article that was incorrect, right? Where it was an expansion and an enhancement of the previous game, which is what we're saying, but they literally meant that it was like a weird expansion and it was going to be like, this is when there was confusion over what was going on.
Yeah.
But Austin said, I think it got cut from today's podcast, but Patrick caught wind of this early. And when he told me, I just sort of said something like, yeah, we're always the freedom cry and never the numbered sequel. I get that. I understand what Austin's saying. I understand what you're saying. What I do want to give credit to with Miles Morales and especially for Insomniac is the fact that they give no fucks about any of the assholes' comfort levels out there. I adore the fact that, of course, Miles Morales comes from a diverse family, right? His mother's Puerto Rican, his
Hmm.
dad is black. And so in dialogue, if you don't have the captions turned on, even when you do, when you don't, if you don't have the captions turned on, when him and his mom slip into Spanish and say "I love you" or back, they don't like put that on screen to tell you what the fuck they're saying. If you have captions on, they'll translate it there or whatever. That happens. They're one of the Haley in the game. She's deaf, right? And it's not drawn out as, oh my god, you're deaf, or this is a big thing. Blah blah. At one point, there's a confusion between him, Genki, and Miles talking about it. And like, oh, I think I know her. Oh, she's the street artist. It's not, oh, she's the deaf girl. Oh, she's the deaf street artist, right? You meet somebody else at one point that is gay. And again, oh, this is my partner. And it's not like this is a diverse Harlem, right? And I mean, I
Hmm.
don't even want to get on my fucking soapbox, but it's an accurate representation of what New York is, from what I understand New York to be as a both visitor, consumer of content, knowing people in New York, right? Having friends in New York. It is this melting pot. And the game fucking nails that
Oh
unabashedly.
yeah.
And so even though there is this thing of like, oh, well, it sucks, like, for Austin's thing here, what you're talking about, blessing, it
Hmm.
sucks that here we go, a black protagonist, and it's not Spider-Man 2, where they're not putting that on there, they're not giving you the 40-hour campaign of it. I do think they are pushing that envelope forward in a way that is, this is what reality is, and we're going to represent that, and that's how it is. And I hope that then if they put out another Spider-Man game or whatever they're going to do going on, we see that this wasn't them saying, "Oh, well, I don't think Miles can anchor a real Spider-Man game." I think it was that we want to get something for PlayStation 5. Let's do something shorter that we can turn around quicker and give Miles a story.
Yeah, for sure.
'Cause-
And those are the things too I point out when I talk about how good the first 75% of the game is moments like that, right? Moments like walking through Harlem, the Spider Cat moment, talking to, I already forget her name, but talking to her in sign language, right? Like
Oh, Haley, yeah.
that brief Haley, yeah, like in that brief moment. Uh the game does that stuff I think super well, and does feel earnest and representative in the way that it goes about representing Harlem and the different people that reside there. And yeah, like I definitely give it a shout out to that. I think I all of what we're talking about kind of comes back to me feeling not down on it, but just conflicted in terms of kind of where I land on my final experience with
Sure.
Miles Morales.
I think it's going to be interesting because what this game does a bunch of different things, right? But in terms of what we're doing in terms of talking about Spider-Man, I'll say in terms as many times as I want to, god damn it. Uh we're talking about, hey, we're continuing and expanding our universe. Hey, we are introducing you to Miles Morales, our Miles Morales, and getting out of the way that he's Spider-Man and he's grown into that, so that when Spider-Man 2 does come out, and when it is a 40-hour campaign, I think that's exaggerating, I guess, probably 20 hours, right? 25, whatever it'll be. When it's a bigger game, it's going to be because we want you passing off between Pete and Miles, and we don't want you feeling like you're getting the shaft. I think
Mhm.
having given us Spider-Man 2, having us start as Pete and then on a second level building out Miles at the same time and trying to get us to care about Miles would work against it because we'd want to get back to Pete and whatever he's doing. Now that I feel these characters are on equal playing field, and again, I'm speaking only for myself, I think that Miles is shining even brighter than Peter is right now in terms of character development, in terms of cast that's surrounding him, in terms of all that stuff. I think it's going to be a really interesting thing to see what Spider-Man 2 is.
Yeah, and I mean, even the idea that you floated earlier of like Spider-Man Miles Morales, Spider-Man Venom being the next one, right? And like
Sure.
they all kind of being this sort of like a bit pared down experience compared to Spider-Man 2018 in order to have that constant flow. I think could be a good idea. I think my only request of it would be that it doesn't feel as iterative. And I think that I mean again, this comes back to critiques I've stated multiple
Sure.
times, but like, you know, one of my small issues with the game is the fact that it does feel like it feels like an expansion. It feels like it is jumping off of the structures and everything that 2018 established in a way where it doesn't feel like it just feels like an iteration as opposed to an innovation.
Yeah.
Uh, I want innovation at some point, right? Like I want to know what the next jump is for Spider-Man because at a certain point, like you could just put out Spider-Man, like a base Spider-Man game and have that stuff all just be DLC packs or expansion packs building off
Sure.
of that same game.
New
Because
stories you're dropping into it. It's a games as a service, right? Yeah.
yeah, like because it already like Miles Morales feels like it barely leaps over that in terms of what it is. Like if this was a huge DLC to Spider-Man 2018, like it wouldn't feel completely out of place. You know, it
Sure.
would be like a man, this is a big DLC, but it wouldn't feel impossible for this to be that. And I guess like if they went down that route of doing that, I guess what I'd want to see is like something to make each game feel special and different in a way that goes beyond just a new story or like a furtherment of the story.
Sure. Yeah, they're in an interesting spot where I think that Spider-Man 2 has you switching off between Miles and Peter. I think my thing is going to be, I've said this before, that I think obviously it'll be about the symbiote. I think how do you make these characters feel different when we know them so well? I think early on in the story, Peter gets the black suit. He gets a whole wealth of new abilities from that as you continue to play through it
Miles
in the story.
or Peter, I see
No,
what
no,
you're saying.
Peter. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
gets the symbiote. He gets new powers that were doing new things with him. He also then starts to get more aggressive, more angry. I think then at some point we have to switch off to be Miles to go fight Peter, and I think that's where you start
Ooh,
anchoring it out there. And I don't
yeah,
think you
I
introduce
like
Venom.
that.
I think Venom, and Brock or whoever at the end of it come there, but we're way ahead of ourselves
We are.
right now. We're
Before we wrap up, did the different Peter throw you off at all? Because it threw me off. I'm still not comfortable with this new Peter Parker.
it. I mean, it threw me off in the way of like, oh right, they redesigned Peter Parker. Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what I mean? And see him and like not have it's similar to what I think it would have been like if they skipped this and went right to Spider-Man 2 and suddenly tried to make me care about Miles. I'm like, who the
Hmm.
fuck are you? I don't know. And I mean, I would know who the fuck you are, but it would be that thing of like, all right, I don't know, man.
Who's this
Like
guy?
I think it's the damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, right? Like in a perfect world, I would have loved to have replayed Spider-Man remastered. So I played Spider-Man remastered, had that entire experience again with new Peter, and then seen new Peter in Miles Morales and been like,
Hmm.
all right, cool, I see where we're at. But instead, did you have it be like, all right, let's go. All right, they changed him.
Yeah.
Fuck, okay.
It
Like, and it's
it
not
just
weird.
felt
It's still Yuri. It's still Yuri's performance. Like,
yeah,
okay,
it just felt so odd to me because I feel in my eyes he looks so different and
he
like
does.
it throws me off because I know the other guy. I don't know this guy.
Who the hell are you? You're not my
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Like who is this guy? Whose man's is this?
Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think of our review of Spider-Man Miles Morales? Let us know in the comments below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on a podcast, just take out your headphones and tell the person next to them what you thought of it. They'll enjoy hearing that. Remember, we are doing a Miles Morales spoiler cast. Next week is the plan. Obviously, everything could change. We'd probably have it up on that Friday or somewhere around there so that when you beat Miles Morales, you have something to listen to where we can all geek out together. No rules. Remember, of course, this is just the start of, well, maybe not. I don't know. You've been watching a lot of it. This is part of our PlayStation 5 coverage. You can go to kindafunny.com/PS5. Get all the podcasts we're doing about our hands-on reviews of the console, the games. We'll continue to add to that list as we go. PS I Love You XOXO out right now too. A whole bunch of cool stuff. Remember, of course, too, full disclosure, PlayStation sent us the PlayStation 5s for review. So FTC, don't come after me. Blessing, I thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, there's a lot more reviews to watch on youtube.com/kindafunnygames. It's been our pleasure to serve you. This PlayStation 5 was provided by PlayStation for review.